What is Nigeria's dominant political ideology? Is it liberalism, conservatism, stomach infrastructure, or elite preservatism? Pardon my poetic license. So is it a B, A, C, or D, or one of the two? Well, the mere fact that stomach infrastructure can even be introduced into our political lexicon says a whole lot. I'll leave you to decide what exactly that is, but our indecision as to where we really belongs shapes our conversation today and is the bane of our unusually problematic politicking. Welcome to Political Paradigm. This Tuesday, I am Bukola Koka, standing in for your regular anchor, Terry Kumi. In today's edition, we take on three different subjects shaping the polity, starting with the PDP's internal crisis, as the Federal High Court in Ibadan nullifies the party's national convention held in November 2025 in Ibadan as well. Then we transit to the foiled coup attempt of 2025, which the military has now confirmed, by the way, and for which the consequences for the alleged perpetrators are inevitable. And then the delay in the Senate, passing of the Electoral Act will also be on the front burner on the program today. So our guests are all ready. But first of all, the political tussle between the Wike and Turaki-led group of the opposition People's Democratic Party has been described as epic, never before seen since the First Republic. Myriad court cases have trailed efforts by both groups of the party to provide direction for the PDP, especially ahead of 2027. The latest being the nullification of the National Convention of the PDP held in Ibadan by the Turaki-led group by a Federal High Court, of course referred to her earlier. This has come with a number of reactions and counter moves. Speaking of which, it has given spin to the Wike-led group of the PDP, which has now announced the approval of its 104th NEC meeting for the conduct of congresses, the ward and state levels, and also for a national convention of its own to hold on March the 28th. Let's listen to them.
And confirm the following schedule of party congresses nationwide. Ward congresses, February. Local government congresses, February. State congresses, March. NEC directed the National Caretaker Committee in collaboration with the National Organizing Secretary and relevant organs of the party to issue detailed guidelines, notices, and modalities for the conduct of the congresses in strict compliance with the PDP Constitution, INEC regulations, and judicial directives. 5. NEC further approved and confirmed March 28th and 29th as the dates for the PDP National Convention to be held in Abuja. This is for the purpose of electing members of the National Working Committee and other statutory organs of the party. NEC affirmed the extension of the tenure of the National Caretaker Working Committee, NCWC, and other affected caretaker committees of the state and zonal chapters, pending the conduct of the National Convention and the state and zonal congresses, respectively.
Well, that's the National Publicity Secretary of the PDP of the Wike-led group, of course, led by Abdurrahman Mohammed, National Chairman Caretaker Group of the Wike-led group. Well, that's Mr. Mohammed Jungudu. Now, let's get an insight into the thinking of the contenders of the soul of the People's Democratic Party amid all of this, as Mr. Ini Ememobong, the National Publicity Secretary of the Saminu Turaki-led group. He joins us now virtually. Mr. Ememobong, thank you so much for coming and thank you for holding on.
And thank you, Buki. Glad to be here.
Yeah, glad to have you.
We're not contending for the soul, we are with the soul.
Oh, well. Why am I not surprised about that immediate pushback? But let's get right into it. In the very early reactions to the judgment of Justice Agomo, I believe, it has been said that the judge ruled out of prayers sought. So let's get clarity on what exactly the prayers of the Saminu Turaki in initiating that suit were in the first place?
Yes, it's a settled fact of law that the court is bound by pleadings that are before the court. Everything within its purview must be brought in by, except it is consequential. And in the circumstance, the pleadings, the reliefs, as encapsulated in my Lord's judgment, wrote out what I've just received the judgment this afternoon, wrote out what the prayers of the claimants were and that of the defendants. And clearly, it was to the fact that we're seeking the nod of the court to recognize an existing fact that was there. The existing fact, and clearly in law and facts, they are the difference. So we're looking for a confluence between the law and the facts that had existed. There is a fact in existence which is undeniable, that a convention happened in Ibadan. What is questionable is the legal recognition of that fact. So when you bring that argument from there, so we're seeking for a legal recognition of the fact of the existence of that convention. And my Lord had the discretion of saying yes or no, but started out by saying that she cannot sit in appeal over the judgment of her learned brothers, which is something found in law, because already as at that time, the judgment of her learned brothers were already before the Court of Appeal, which was seized of the matter in the two cases referred to. And out of the blue, Swomoto, my Lord, said that the claimants did not counterclaim. Now, so a counterclaim would have been a separate suit upon which my Lord would have based this judgment. But the claimants did not counterclaim. He said that in the counter affidavit of one of the respondents, that she had found stated that the caretaker had been formed. My Lord did not even inquire into, because it wasn't an issue that could be joined. That wasn't the issue. That my Lord said that she found that it's been stated that a caretaker had been created, and that she now says that that caretaker is the legal leadership of the party. I mean, it is strange to know, with due respect to my Lord, because this was not pleaded for. It was not an issue that could be joined, because it was not the focus, the nexus of the case. It was not the gravamen of the case. And so, but I'm a lawyer, so we are trained to respect the court, even if you disagree. But my Lord can only err in law. My Lord cannot err. So with all due respect to the court, which is why we have filed a notice of appeal and a motion for stay of execution. And we have put in our notice of appeal that we intend to appeal all the parts of the judgment. And that has been done. We have filed those notices. We are processing records, and very soon, I'm sure the Court of Appeal will be seized of that. So the nature of the matter is the shock with which the court could become a Father Christmas, which is against the stated position of the law. That, I mean, even in electoral matters, which is sui generis, you must make your reliefs. You must ask for something which the court must give. There are cases where the court has said, this judgment succeeds in part, but we cannot give other orders because they were not asked for, except they become consequential. That, again, is a dangerous trend, which is what I've been shouting and reiterating for the umpteenth time, that the judicialization of politics and the politicization of the judiciary will not help this republic. It does not help for democratic consolidation. And so when the courts have become a part of the political process, like they were in the First and Second Republic, determining as it were then and as it is now, who is the candidate of this. And you have seen that in this republic, most of the candidates have emerged through the courts. I mean, it clearly shows that a clear line, which is why my lords in the Supreme Court have said repeatedly that there is no reason why the court should inquire into the internal affairs. What are the internal affairs? The emergence of candidates, the leadership processes of candidates, of political parties, that these are non-justiciable issues. But, I mean, here we are faced with a circumstance where a court, and there are many judgments, conflicting judgments of the court, which is why we're heading to the Court of Appeal to see what the court will be. It is good and bad. Good in the sense that it would help develop the political jurisprudence as it relates to some of these pre-election matters. It would deepen it because, like you said, this is something never before seen. And so something doesn't happen until it has happened. So now that it has happened, The judgments of the court, we'd hope that when we get to the Supreme Court, that even the Federal High Court will try to abide by them, but it would deepen the jurisprudence and will help lawyers and even their clients and even the political parties so that we don't travel this route again. It's a route that should never have been traveled in the first instance, but having traveled it, we're going to get to the end so that we can definitively put a legal stamp on this issue so that we know whether the courts have jurisdiction over internal political affairs. If they do, to what extent? If they don't, is it an absolute non-judicial, non-justiciability of these matters? And so this will provide the Supreme Court an opportunity to rest these facts. But what is bad is the timing, and which is why we're appealing to the judges and the courts at the various extent to expedite. Reason being that if you go back to 2003, you recall that incidences like this had happened, where Atiku Abubakar then as vice president had issues, but the courts were very fast in determining. But I do know that between then and now, the courts, especially the Court of Appeal, is also bulk with a lot of cases that have clogged their court list.
Yeah, and it's a fair point that you make. To what extent should the courts be involved in internal affairs of political parties? But I couldn't ignore what you said about judicialization of politics and politicization of the judiciary, which would, of course, tempt me to ask if you're confident that this would not be an element or a factor that will influence the appeal court's decision now that you have appealed. But don't answer that. Answer this one instead. The national leader, quote and unquote, of the other group of the PDP, that's Minister Nyesom Wike, is asking, and I quote, "How do you obey two final judgments and claim leadership? You held a convention against court orders, and now you are back asking a federal high court to recognize you. If INEC already recognized you, what exactly are you going to the court for?" So is it not the political parties and politicians who are encouraging this interference of the judiciary by their own inability to sort out their own house, to put their own house in order?
Well, first, it speaks to the morality of the person whose name you've just mentioned. A person who sits in his own house but claims that he's working for another party. And clearly that goes to the roots of the matter. And he's not hidden the fact that he's anti-democratic, both in posture and statements. And those are things that is sad that we are having that after different cycles of elections that have come. Politicians will keep being politicians, even in the United States, the bastion of democracy. And when you study the history of democracy and democratization, which is why scholars have insisted that democracy is an ideal. It is yet to be attained, even in America, but that democratization is the journey towards democracy. You remember that in the penultimate elections that the fabric of America was tested to its limit when the incumbent president as then was insisted that he didn't accept the results of the elections where someone had won him, and he even tried to get his vice president as president of the Senate to help, and which the vice president clearly refused, which led to the attack on the Capitol. If that happened in America, politicians the world over will remain politicians. So whether you're talking about electoral authoritarianism, which is what we are seeing now in Nigeria, where the federal government, the ruling party, and the institutions of state are trying to make sure that elections are merely a date on the calendar without any uncertainty, because the definitive criteria of elections are the institutionalized uncertainty. Which is why you now see the push where the national chairman of APC will speak to PDP governors and say, if you want to retain your seat, you better cross to our party. I mean, those subtle threats, and you hear governors who cross saying, oh, the president invited me. For a president who can declare a state of emergency, an invitation will be summoned or directed that I should come. So when you take all of this in a community perspective to begin to dissect and unpack them, it will go clearly to the fact that politicians the world over will be politicians. You just had what happened in Venezuela. You've seen what happened in Cameroon. You've seen what happened in many African countries where politicians are the same. But that is why institutions of state, national institutions, must be insulated from it. That is why you see, despite the fact that the president of the United States nominates nominates judges and justices to the Supreme Court of the United States. But you see that immediately after that nominations, those justices begin to take on the cloak of neutrality, conscious of the fact that it is more important for justice to be seen to have been done, that trust is rooted in perception. So you begin to see those things. So will you blame politicians for going to court? No. When you get to court, the court returns you and says, look, we do not have. And the courts have been there. The courts in Nigeria worked against the military. The courts in Nigeria have fought to stabilize democracy. Like I remember during the 2003 episode, Atiku Abubakar in and out of court. I'm wondering if it was this period, what would happen? Remember that he was asked that since he left his political party, that he needed to vacate his office. He went to court. The court ruled up onto the Supreme Court, and the judgments were there. Several cases happened at that point that entrenched democracy. Remember, it was going to be the first transition in the Fourth Republic. But the court played a critical role in consolidating democracy then, even against a sitting president. What the perception that exists now, which you can go to town as a credible media organization and ask about the perception of Nigerians in the judiciary. And when you see this weakening of this perception, you cannot blame politicians. Politics is a game of concentric political conspiracies, where the circles are turning and people are taking positions here and there. So they would always approach the court. But that is why the rules of court, the constitution, the rules of practice, the rules of court are there to determine the things that are justiciable or not. And where a judge has the discretion to act, the judge should act that discretion must be exercised in the best interest of the society. What is that best interest of this? For the protection of democracy. But here you find that where there are no discretions, people still force themselves to act against democracy. A person has come up to say that, look, the only condition I give is that my party must not contest against the president. And this is a multi-party system that must thrive.
The ship seems to be sailing on the points that you're making now, and you indeed quoted the judge's ruling earlier on. And, you know, your estranged cousins in the other faction are riding on that to now conduct congresses at the state and ward levels and a national convention slated for March. Is your group worried about this, particularly with your own concern as well, that the judiciary is being politicized? Is your group worried that you're losing grip?
We're not worried. It's just a string in the unfolding political drama that is happening, whose paymaster everyone knows, but it's just the elephant in the room that some people don't want to speak about. So that drama is titled Fool's Paradise, and it would exist for a while, but it would, like ice being put in a fry pan, it would melt very quickly. I can assure you that, because I'm sure they also know, which is why they pushed. We won't be shocked if they have an active connivance in INEC with the disposition of INEC. We won't be shocked at all. But we are certain that at the end of this, democracy will survive. At the end of this, the People's Democratic Party, the sole owners, the owners of the soul, the holders of the soul, where if you were to do a referendum among PDP, true PDP members today, you would find them gravitate towards one end. The organs of the party clearly are under Tanimu Turaki. And so this drama calls Fool's Paradise or Friends will soon end. And when it ends, we'll be happy that democracy will be back on point and we'll be getting back. Now, so what the point I need to make before I stop for you to ask a question is the fact that multi-party system is the basis upon which this democracy is built on. Remember that we transited in the Third Republic that was incoherent, that had a two-party system. And when in 1998, the new structure was going to happen, the negotiations insisted that there must be a multi-party democratic system, which all the major players then agreed to that. Now, the attempt to railroad the entire country into a Chinese model,
checking my setup.
A Chinese modeled one-party system where the other parties exist at the mercy of the ruling party will not work here. We are so pluralistic a society, so heterogeneous in composition, that a one-party state cannot and will not work. And I keep saying that the danger to democracy is the absence of the protection of the opposition. Now, people will ask, why should they protect? The defection of people from one political party to another is something that does not help, does not consolidate, but weakens democracy. Because the question is, the moral question for us is, if someone was elected on this platform, like you were talking about ideology before, and there's a moral contract, a tripartite moral contract between the person who is voting, the party he or she is seeing on the ballot, and the eventual person whom that party had brought. Now, so when you defect, you take off a critical leg of that, which is the party. So the person who voted for a party, that party brought someone because he wasn't the person who was voted for. So at that point, when you remove the party, you now leave the people who voted in limbo because they voted on the basis of a promise. They cannot hold you to task because some of them have become unreachable. The party that they voted for, they now come to us, where is the gentleman or the lady you produced? And they said, well, we cannot find him. So it creates a confusion that makes it difficult to resolve. So these processes, the emergence of electoral authoritarianism is still a form of authoritarianism, which should be rejected. Multi-party democratic system should be allowed.
We'll talk about that in passing. But on the matter of INEC, some Nigerians would disagree with you because they believe that INEC seems to have demonstrated its impartiality in the PDP matter by the evident absence of the name of a PDP candidate in the list of candidates for the Ekiti governorship elections.
No. In fact, that action by INEC shows where they are at the moment. Because, you see, when you look at, INEC just had a judgment, I think, against SDP, where the court told INEC clearly that having monitored, and in fact, in the case of SDP, they did not even monitor the primaries. They said it is a fact that if the party forwards to you a candidate, that you should accept the candidate. In the instance of Ekiti, of course, we're in court on the Ekiti matter, and very soon, too, we hope that we'll come through with that. In the instance of Ekiti and Osun, INEC was there, and they have a report. You don't need us to even forward. I mean, what that report does is to keep us in check so that we don't forward another name, because candidates are supposed to come out through a democratically elected process. So if you have a report that you monitor the process and you saw that there is absolutely no encumbrance to that process, the formal submission is merely contained in the guidelines published by INEC. So, I mean, you should take judicial notice of an act you conducted. It's like a midwife being asked about the sex of the gender of the baby, he or she midwife, and he says, no, I'm waiting for the doctor to come and confirm. Well, that is obvious. So the impartiality of INEC is questioned, especially under this leadership, is questioned. How do we say so? Remember that the last INEC chairman before he left had registered several organizations and pre-qualified them for registration as political parties. We've not heard from that again. Now, in terms of even, I also do know that the issues of the Electoral Act pending before the National Assembly has made it slightly difficult as to what to prepare Nigerians for or what not to prepare them for. But in terms of even civic engagement, I would like that you score this INEC, compare this INEC with the first tenure of Jega, or even in the second tenure, apart from the glitch and the issues, first tenure of Jega, or the Mahmoud first and second tenure, apart from the issue of glitches. So we must ensure that democracy is protected.
All right. We'll leave Nigerians to make up their minds finally on that particular one, on INEC's impartiality. But as we coast home now, it's clear, it's been clear all along, of course, the motivation for defection, seen in the inability of your party to, look for an enduring solution to the leadership crisis. Hence, the defection for a platform that will guarantee a second-term ticket for the governors who have defected. But there is one man, some may describe as the last man standing. That's the Zamfara governor, who has, doubled down on his decision not to leave the party. What is your group offering the Zamfara governor that has made him vehemently stand by your group of the party amid this crisis?
No, the gentleman, Daud Alawal, is a gentleman in every sense. And he tells you that, look, as at the time he ran for governor, the other party would not have given him a ticket. And therefore, if this party stood with him through the thick and thin, that he also owes a moral duty. He says, look, I'm involved in politics. I'm not a politician. I'm involved because I want to serve my people. But I have my personal principles that I'm living with, and that is why I can't fall for anything. That is the caliber of gentleman that Dauda Lawal is, and that is what politicians should be. Furthermore, he knows, having looked at it, he knows that at the end of the day, he who laughs last will laugh best. And again, to correct an impression, most of the governors who have not left because of the party crisis. In fact, some of them are part of the crisis that we are having, because some of them have issues they are afraid of. They have skeletons in their cupboard, and they think that, look, having the ruling party to contend with will begin to give them problems. But more importantly, they keep saying one thing: we want to link our states to the center. And that is the fact the media is not speaking about enough. It shows that we are not running an egalitarian system. We are running a nepotistic system that if you don't have someone, or if your umbilical cord is not linked to the center, that there are some things that your state is being denied. Is that how a federation should work? Yes, I do know that we are running a federation on paper and a unitary system in practice, because all the governors must go and take their resources. But I'm saying it shows that we do not have a system where fairness operates across the political parties. So if you don't belong to the president's political parties, there are so many things that you're losing, so many things people are losing, and that is clearly not how a federation should run. Try that in the United States, try that in some other places. You see where governors tell the president, sorry, you're the president of the federation, but in our state, this is what we want. I'm not sure we have those kind of governors today.
Well, we wonder what would happen in 2027 if your party is not able to guarantee a ticket for the governor of Zamfara State. We're watching with bated breath. But if you say that the governors are defecting because they have skeletons in their cupboard, we're also wondering if you're exposing them now because they've left you. Well, we must thank you very much, Mr. Ememobong, for coming on the
absolutely.
program.
When you just go back to their history, you see clearly what they are running away from. And I can assure you that Dauda Lawal is safe. His political future is safe. And I mean, we are running an equifinality system. There are many ways to get to one destination.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Ememobong. Mr. Ememobong is the National Publicity Secretary of the People's Democratic Party, of course, of the Saminu Turaki-led group. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you, Buki.
We'll take a moment now. When we return, it will be time to look at the foiled coup attempt, the cause, consequences for our democracy. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's still Political Paradigm on Channels Television. Let's get to that critical conversation now about the foiled coup attempt as announced by the military, of course, for which arrests have been made, and the military has declared that they would face the consequences. And joining me now on the program is General Henry Ayola, retired of the Nigerian Army. He joins me virtually on the program. General Ayola, thank you for holding on and for coming on the program.
Yeah, thank you, Buki, and Happy New Year. Happy New Year to our viewers.
Happy New Year to you, sir. Let's get right into it. Now, the interview that the Minister of Defense granted our sister political program is quite compelling because it reveals a whole lot. One of which I want to refer to is when he said that, look, this coup has been planned even before 2023, as soon as the plotters knew that it was this current president that won the election, it had been hatched. And that's quite some time ago, prior to 2023. We're in 2026 already. Now, help us tie the suggestion in that bit of information about disaffection within the military and, of course, what appears to be the socio-economic challenges in the country. Are they related, or the factors causing the coup from the institutional perspective are entirely different?
Yeah, thank you so very much once again. Well, I think we need to look at it from several angles. Of course, as an analyst, I'm not going to look at just that dimension or that viewpoint alone, because that information could only have come from the suspects as to when they started. Okay, and there are many options. One, they could be saying that as a kind of revisionist stratagem to cover their tracks and to further muffle the possibility of identifying the origin, the intentions, and all of that. That's one way to look at it. The other way, of course, is to think of, it indicates a whole lot about the true intent behind it and the likely real origin, true origin. Because I mean, if they were going to take advantage of that interregnum between the outgoing government and the new government, of course, it provides a lot of advantage in terms of, it's a period where there'll be a kind of destabilization in the system, and of course, they could take advantage of that. That's taking, I mean, assuming that that's a true assumption from their end, or that's what they said. Okay, but if it's an outcome of an investigation, then of course, I mean, then we need to take it very seriously. And then of course, now that says a whole lot. Now, let me start by saying, first and foremost, the concept of coup, military coup making, I mean, which is age-long, concept, and which you usually find the category of people who fall into that temptation, let me put it that way, is age-long too. People who are disgruntled, people who are not happy with the system, people who think that they've not benefited from the system, and think that if they can offset the system and give themselves a more advantageous, position, then of course they will enjoy better. So a lot of that, people who are in, like the story of King David in the Bible, when he was getting people to follow him, the same kind of thing. Those who are indebted, those who are disgruntled, those who are not happy, all of that. So that usually is in the background, of mostly people who are either lured or they are the one champion. Usually it's a few people that champion, this thing. Others are brought in either by, some may not even know that they are being brought in, so they may just be people walking in line of whoever is a senior person in the area where they work. And it's not, I mean, your boss doesn't have to explain to you why he's giving you an order. I mean, you're talking of military. So all of these are possibilities. But let's take for real this perspective that it started before then. Then you then begin to ask many questions. But when you look at the list of those involved, the spread in terms of geographical spread, the spread in terms of the rank, and you put all of that together, then you ask yourself, maybe what went wrong with the last government in terms of the issue of fairness, justice, and equity? Were there genuine concerns and genuine examples and cases where equity, justice, and fairness suffered? And within the military system particularly, And of course, when you also note that there are civilian accomplices, at least from the list that we are given, then you also appreciate the fact that when people cannot get what they want through the front door, they try to get it through the back door. That also is an element you can see there. So there are far-reaching, implications. Well, again, if you look at it from generations, I mean, I look at the generation of the officers in the armed forces today. Even the most senior of them must have been at best very young officers at the time maybe the last military coup happened in the country.
Yeah.
So their knowledge, their experience, or any possibility of having participated in the previous coup is virtually zero. So, so you begin to actually ask, so why would they want to take such a blind leap? It's like committing suicide, because when you look at the indicators and the paradigms of things that need to be in place before anybody can even be contemplating a thing like this, it's either that they're acting out of abysmal advertisement of ignorance, or they were pushed to the point that they were willing, to take this kind of blind leap. Because again, coup is like war. If you succeed, then you jubilate. If you fail, it's death. So it's like you go into battle, it's either you kill the enemy first or the enemy kill you first. So it's not a flippant thing. It's not a scanty decision. It's not a decision you can take casually.
Yeah,
So,
and
yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
General, your insights, they cause a shiver to run down the spine. You know why? Because of the consequence for, organizing a coup, even if you were co-opted without knowing it. So it's quite scary. But you talked about the geographical spread of this outlook of names that have come out. Initially it was 16, now we're seeing 44 names. And if you take a close look at that geographical spread, it provides some indicators. What does this say about, I know you had referred to it, but what does this say about this traditional ethnic dichotomy that often shapes our electoral reality and our governance outlook? Should we be laying it again only on the former administration? If those issues had been addressed since 2023, do you think the coup plotters would have gone through with this coup? I know it's quite a lot in one, but I'm sure you're capable.
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me emphasize and maybe elucidate on the fact that when I say the geographical spread, that's what I call the Nigerian question, the inherent clash of civilizations we have been living with. I've spoken about this again and again on many platforms, and we all pretend it's not there, but it keeps haunting us. It keeps coming back to the reality of our unity. Either we have actually crafted a nation state, a genuine nation state, or we are still a multinational country with diversities of ideology, interests, identity, clash of values, clash of principles, clash of interests, all of this. We've been living and pretending. We've not decisively, confronted this question, this Nigerian question. And so you find it playing out again and again in virtually everything we do. And so, again, you cannot nullify that. I mean, it plays out here. But like why I said perhaps it's a revisionist stratagem for them to confuse the investigation too. If they are the ones saying that, if the suspects, don't forget they are still suspects, if the suspects are the ones saying that they started this, towards the end of the last government, I could also see that as a deliberate attempt to dodge the possibility of tracing it to the real origin. But if it's already an outcome of investigation done by the security and intelligence agencies, by the way, I need to salute the professionalism and the vigilance of our security and intelligence services and agencies for being able to, break through this. I mean, that's a whole lot of work. Kudos to them. But, answering your question more directly is to say, yes, we still have these fault lines of cultural clash, and all of that, and the dichotomy between the ethno-religious fault lines that we pretend that they are not there, but we know they play out in virtually everything. I mean, I grew up in the system. I started my military career from the military school in Zaria before going to the academy in Kaduna. I can trace how we got here, okay, as a nation. There was a time where nobody really cared where you came from. I mean, you didn't even know where your friend was from. You didn't care because that was not the point of interest. That was not the point of friendship. There was a time where the nation was more homogenic by relationship. And then we knew when this injection of ethno-religious consideration began to creep in, and I grew up to become a major force and all of that. So these things are there, and that's why, like I think it was Thomas Jefferson, the third American president, who said that eternal vigilance is the price of freedom. We know that one of the most precious ingredients of democracy is freedom. Okay, and for us to keep this freedom, we must stay on course. We must remain perpetually at that cutting edge of possible fault lines degenerating into things like this, where people actually now decide to rock the system. Okay, but obviously the I mean, bearing the fact that the generation of those who are involved could not have had anything to do with it in their younger age, younger period of their career. And that means they had to think originally. I mean, I'm a signal officer, I know fairly well some of the, things that had to be done in those days and all that, but not that I never really, even my own generation, we can't talk of having participated in such a thing. So it means the issue
General,
is pushing them. Yes.
Where did the divisions begin to emerge when you were in the military, and where? Since you witnessed quite a lot.
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot there, but it's okay. Because we need to find this. We need to be able to put our fingers on when did this, become an issue for us as a nation. Okay, if you follow the history of Nigeria, of course, the first coup in 1966 also demonstrated that. I mean, you could see that element of the dichotomy between North and South, ethnic preferences or inclinations playing out. Then, of course, it grew from that point. When, of course, it was followed up by the what we call the counter coup, okay, which was more or less a revenge coup. So you see the part of the nation where that was predominant in that also. Then you move from there until 1975, and this really rocked the system. I was already in uniform. I mean, the only two that happened before I was in uniform is the 66 school. From 75, I was following this, as a boy soldier. It was news for us then, and because we were within the system, we were following. And of course, I remember I was a stick cuddler in the military school. Some of the senior officers, I've seen them closely, matching them on parade and all of that. So you trace it from then. You come to 75, where some of these sentiments were now amplified, by the time, the coup that, happened in that 75. And you also see the Dinka coup, for example, which was a response to the fourth coup in 75, was also, you could see where it was located in the middle belt, more or less. Because then, of course, they could feel the pinch of the changes that were happening, as a result of the Murtala Mohammed school. So,
all right.
And it was not only the military this thing had influences on. If you remember also, even the civil service, the public service also were victims. They were casualties of that, what was seen as toughness.
All right.
Which, I mean, some other people will see it as some irrationality and some arbitrariness, that were displayed. I remember some of the even service chiefs in the armed forces who were, just summarily dismissed. Some of them didn't have homes to pack to. Just to tell you, there was a time where our leaders were very honest in this country.
We must anchor at this point.
Can you imagine a service chief not having a home to pack to when retired? And some pump sets were given 24 hours to pack out of their official quarter. This thing disrupted the system, brought issues of trust within the system. And that's when some of what we call corruption today, when people saw those kind of things, they began to think, okay, if this is how it is, I think we have to learn to take care of ourselves. Because we don't know that we're going to be thrown out into the cold also like this. Things like that began to happen.
We must anchor at this point. You have answered my question at the same time. I saw that you also tacitly avoided the destination where you'd have headed. But we would have talked about consequences, which are dire, which is also forming the debate about how this will be handled, especially because of the civilians that were allegedly involved in this coup. But clearly it's an ongoing one, and we must thank you very much for coming on the program. General Henry Ayola is a retired general of the Nigerian Army. Thank you for coming on Political Paradigm.
Thank you very much.
We'll take a moment now. When we return, it's been a series of constitution of committees, deferment of the consideration by the Senate of the Electoral Act Amendment Bill. Now, we're just days away from the deadline that INEC requires to have a valid document by which it will conduct the 2027 general elections. Else, it would have to resort to using the 2022 Electoral Act. We'll be talking about this when we return from this break. Join us again. Welcome back. Engineer Yabagi Sani, former chairman, IPAC Advisory Group, joins me now on the program virtually. And I believe, welcome, by the way, Engineer Sani. I believe you're also national chairman. Are you still national chairman of the ADP?
Yes, very much so.
All right.
Democratic Party, yes.
Yes.
ADP.
Welcome.
I'm the national chairman.
Yeah, welcome, sir. So, the Senate is supposed to receive the report of the committee it constituted, led by the Chairman Senate Committee on Judiciary, I believe, Senator Ni Agbomire, today. So we're expecting news on that consideration. But ahead of that, if the National Assembly is unable to conclude its work today on the amendment within 3 weeks for President Tinubu to assent, then the 2027 election may be postponed or conducted with the 2022 Electoral Act. The question is, and the Senate has received a lot of backlash for the delay. The ADC is saying that it's deploying delay tactics. Civil society is saying that the Senate is grandstanding and it is really not committed to the Electoral Act for obvious reasons. The question is, what is the political elite afraid of?
Well, quite honestly, Bukola, like you know, the Electoral Act amendment is about the voters, really, Nigerians. It's not about the political class. Because we are talking about stability of this country, we are talking about a case where votes will count. We are talking about a case where even the umpire, the umpire, I'm talking about INEC now, will have clear laws that will protect them, will enable them to really deliver on the mandate given to them. We are talking about having primaries, even the political parties conducting primaries that will not be litigated, endlessly. So it's about the gains that we have achieved already. If you look at the Electoral Act 2022, which we are talking about, because of the beavers and other technological advancements introduced, the quality of the process had improved. But we have also observed during the 2023 elections that there are gaps, and those gaps were what led to Nigerians being so disappointed, because what they expected was not what we got. Nigerians were expecting transmission to be from the polling unit to the RF, so that they can see it as it's happening in other countries. As votes are coming, you can count and you can predict, or you can know exactly, the directions that we are going. So these gains that we are able to achieve in the 2022 Electoral Act is what we are trying to protect with this amendment. But if we don't, we will again roll back to those days of manual manipulation, which is what happened in 2023. If you remember, the presidential collation was not done to the expectations of Nigerians, because Nigerians were expecting that at the ICC Center, which is today now, Bola Ahmed Tinubu Conference Center, they were expecting that they will see, like you on your handsets, you'll be able to know where APC is winning, where PDP is winning, where ADP is winning, but that wasn't the case. We again found ourselves back to the manual process, which we had already jettisoned. So the issue now is, how do we ensure that it's not courts that are declaring winners instead of voters? How do we ensure that our election is not monetized, to the point of making a nonsense of it, or making it a mercantile system? How do we ensure that the voter, confidence is brought back into the system, and they will come out and will not feel that end of the day it is what INEC decides that will happen, because the laws even giving INEC the power says that in accordance with what INEC prescribed. That shouldn't be the case. It should be in accordance with the system, not giving INEC that power, which is so ambiguous. So the way the National Assembly is going about it is like they want to protect what they are enjoying at the expense of quality elections, at the expense of the voters, so that those who have money can always go to court, and then get their way instead of the votes to count. So this is why the what do you call it? The stakeholders are not happy, especially the civil society groups, and then people like ourselves. We are not happy because we want an election that Nigerians will believe in. We want an election that will be governed by law. We want an election that you can predict. It's not an election that will be left to the court to decide. And that's what we have today, which is not good enough. So people saying that National Assembly is playing games, you cannot really say they are wrong, because they know that we need time to really make sure that these very necessary amendments that I've mentioned are introduced so as to make the process to be very, very transparent and acceptable.
So let's assume that the National Assembly is not playing games and give it the benefit of the doubt. Section 4, subsection 7 of the draft, that's the draft of the amendment bill, says elections into the office of President and Governor of the state shall be held no later than 185 days before the expiration of the term of the office of the last holder of the office. The tenure of the current incumbents is expected to expire on May 29, 2027. That's for those who are seeking re-election now. Let's assume that the Electoral Act Amendment Bill is passed today and INEC is giving the go-ahead to conduct elections on a new regime of a new set of laws that reflect the reforms that the generality of Nigerians are expecting. Won't INEC be thrown into a quandary? Will INEC, on the new template, be able to conduct credible elections with all of the requirements of elections within this short time available?
No, you see, Electoral Acts is not something that you rush, with this kind of firefighting arrangements. No, this is about this country. And this is why people are suspecting that there was something that the National Assembly is not telling Nigerians. Otherwise, if there's any bill or any law that National Assembly should have concentrated on and ensure that we get it right in time, it has to be the Electoral Act. But look at what is happening today. We are boxed to a corner whereby you either say, well, we have to, like you said, we have to go back to the law, which we know is faulty, or postpone the elections. But we cannot postpone these elections. There's no way we will postpone the elections. The only thing that maybe INEC can do is to see, how a bad case can be made, can be made to be something that is better than what it was. Because Nigerians, believe you me, I don't know what will happen. If what happened in 2023 repeats itself, I don't know what will happen to this country, because it's not something you want to contemplate. And what we are asking for is to ensure that we continuously improve this process. And the amendments that are proposed in that bill, believe you me, they are amendments that will make this Electoral Act to deliver what Nigerians want. It will reduce cost interferences. It will reduce INEC interferences. It will take it away from the manual processes. Like you are saying, the timelines given in the Constitution, that INEC has to give notice 360 days before the election itself, and then that the other timelines given in the Electoral Act are sacrosanct. You cannot manipulate those timelines. Otherwise, you find yourself in court again, and the whole election itself will become subject of litigation.
All right. We must anchor at this point. We expect, the outcome of the report of the committee set up by the Senate today. And, of course, Nigerians will have a whole lot to decide upon based on the disposition of the Senate. We must thank you very much for coming on the program. Engineer Yabagi Sani is former chairman, IPAC Advisory Group, and, of course, national chairman of the ADP. Thank you for your time on the program.
Thank you, Bukola. Thank you for having me.
And here's where we drop the anchor on Political Paradigm. Thank you for watching. We'll be back again next week. I am Bukola Koka, standing in for Terry Ikumi. Bye for now.